Welcome, everyone. If I haven't had the fortune of meeting you, I am Mandy Drogan, the campaign director of Next Generation Texas here at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. That is a very long way of saying I am a mom who is looking out for the future for my children, your children, and children all across Texas. I want to thank everyone for joining us here today. Please begin eating as we bless the food with an invocation shortly by Representative Cody Harris. As you can see, you're having delicious chimichurri steak salad, but for those of you who are observing Lent, you can just put up your hand and ask your server to bring you a salmon salad, and that's an easy switch. Thank you again for everyone joining us for this amazing week of patriots from across Texas and across the country. We are so incredibly blessed here in Texas to have each of you who sacrifice daily, annually, and many for decades on end to fight for the values that we all share in Texas, the values that have made Texas and America the greatest, most benevolent, most prosperous state and country that the world has ever known. I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors who make this incredible event happen every year. You will see them scrolling on our screen, and you've seen them out in the hallways on our pop-ups. We are so grateful for your support and your treasure as we put on amazing events both this week and across our state to support Texas values and support those who are fighting to keep Texas the freest in the nation. I'd also like to take a moment to recognize our incredible board of directors, starting with our chairman, Kyle Stallings, Chairman Emeritus, Tim Lyles, Mr. Ernest Angelo, Don Bennett, Doug Deason, Them Head, Stacy Hawk, and Chaz Neely. We are also so grateful for all of our VIPs in the room. It's really all of you, but for everyone who has been supportive and everyone who is representing us in the legislature, we are so grateful. I'd like to start by thanking Senator Ted Cruz, who will join us here shortly. He's still in DC fighting his bi-monthly standoff with the federal government to keep us funded, so he will be here on our screens. Also want to recognize the representatives that are in the room. We have Representatives Richard Hayes, he's back here, Mr. Mark DeRazio, Terry Leo Wilson, Cody Harris, and Carrie Isaac. We also have Senator Mays Middleton in the room, SBOE Chairman Aaron Kinsey, and 12th Circuit Court of Appeals Chief Justice Jim Worthen. We also want to express gratitude for our uniformed officers that have been with us throughout this entire week. We are so grateful for their service for us here at the conference, but also to our entire community as they keep us safe. Please join me in thanking and recognizing Sergeant Josh Alba, Sergeant Julian Smith, and Corporal Almar Sines. I would now like to invite Representative Cody Harris to join me on stage to give the invitation for today's lunch. Representative Harris is a fifth-generation Texan, and his conservative values are deeply rooted in Texas House District 8. His ancestors settled in Freestone County after the Civil War, and his great-grandfather was the last operator of the Wildcat Ferry on the Trinity River at Cayuga. With an extensive background in real estate and banking, Representative Harris is also a graduate of Texas A&M University and the Texas Agricultural Lifetime Leadership Program. As a member of the Texas House since 2019, Representative Harris has served as and is currently the chair of the Local and Consent Calendars Committee. He and his wife Taylor are the proud parents to 3 sons and a daughter, and their family is active at First Baptist Church, where Cody serves as a deacon. I'd also like to add, as I had the blessing of meeting Cody's 3 sons who are sitting with us today, and as a mom that's trying to teach my 7-year-old, 4-year-old, and 2-year-old how to shake hands and make eye contact and speak, I can tell you that I know that Representative Harris, not only is he a champion for parents, teachers, education reform, and the future generation of Texas, but just by shaking his children's hand, I could tell he was an incredible father as well. Please join me in welcoming Representative Cody Harris.
Thank you so much, Mandy. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as we go to the Lord in prayer. Father, thank you for the meal we're about to eat, and we ask for your blessings over it and over the hands that prepared it. We thank you for the privilege of being able to gather together and freely discuss and debate ideas in a world filled with oppression and darkness. We thank you for the incredible blessing of living in the greatest state in the greatest country on earth, where those who come before us have left a legacy of freedom and liberty. We're in a troubled and divided time, but we trust that your will is perfect, and we know that no authority exists that you have not appointed. Give us the humility to seek your perfect will and the wisdom to lead in it. Amplify those who speak truth and expose those who purposefully deceive. Raise up those who seek to glorify you and your Son, and bring down those who seek to glorify themselves. You've told us what is good and what you require of us, so let us seek justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with you. You and you alone deserve all the honor and the glory, and it's in the holy and powerful name of Jesus that I pray. Amen.
I'm going to invite you to continue eating as we move through our program with Senator Cruz. And at this time, I'd like to invite the CEO and visionary for the Texas Public Policy Foundation, Mr. Greg Sindelar.
Mandy caught me mid-bite, so sorry about that. Well, I'm really looking forward to today. I'm really sorry that Senator Cruz couldn't join us in person, but he'll be with us on screen momentarily. I will have a conversation with him. I wanted to make sure I didn't forget the questions, so I got those. But I hope you have enjoyed the last few days as we spend a lot of time talking about what is important to Texas and what is important to our country. I think we've heard from a lot of Texas leaders and a lot of visionaries these past few days. And if there's one thing I hope you're taking away is all the, really heavy issues that are going on. I hope you're optimistic, and I hope being in this room is making you optimistic, because we should be optimistic. We have the grace of God to wake up in Texas today and to be in Texas right now. But with that comes the duty of what we have to do to save our state and save our country. But we should have optimism for the victories we've won. There's lots of things that we look out, a lot of things that Governor Abbott and many of our legislative leaders have talked about the last few days that have made life better for us here in Texas. But we should also have optimism for the victories to come and that we're going to continue to fight for, because we can't rest on our laurels, right? We know the other side continues to work day and night against us, and we have to ensure that we do everything we can to ensure that Texas remains the freest place and America remains the freest place on earth. And so what does that look like? Well, one of the many things that we're doing here at Texas Public Policy Foundation is ensuring that Texas is the best place to have and raise a family. One of the things that many people talk about is, I was actually doing a podcast with Senator Brian Hughes earlier today, and we were talking about the heartbeat bill. It's like, but it's not just about saving kids from being aborted. It's about ensuring that we realize the potential of every single child in this country. And so I'm really want to emphasize this point. I'm proud to announce that Texas Public Policy Foundation, and understanding that the family, the nuclear family, is the basic building block and the key ingredient in any free and prosperous society, and is indispensable to the foundation of liberty, is getting into family policy in a much, much bigger way. So in the months to come, you'll see our work and our approach come into full view on this front. And I can tell you, under the extraordinary leadership of my good friend, our VP of Policy, Andrew Brown, and his vision, the foundation will be focusing first upon policy. Policies that ensure Texas, as I said earlier, is the best place to raise and have a family. That people would rather have children and families in Texas than go to California and have abortions. And so what does some of that look like? What are some of the policies? Well, this includes supporting and raising awareness for the success sequence in Texas and amongst our children and amongst our citizenry. And what is that? Well, it's really a simple formula. You know, you finish school, you get a job, you get married, you have kids. If you do these things, then we know the chance that you will live in poverty is almost zero. And even now, the foundation is researching policy to make this a reality, and we're committed, and we're in this arena for months and years to come, and our engagement will expand. And we've racked up tremendous victories on this, and Senator Hughes talked about some of those on my podcast earlier today, but there will be much more to come because we have to do everything we can to ensure that we are doing the right thing for families in Texas. But we can't just limit ourselves to Texas. And we have to continue to take this work and take the things that have made our state so special across the country. And for several years, our state's trust operation, which Senator Cruz actually helped start many, many years ago. Before he was a senator, he was in private practice, and my predecessor, my good friend, the person who hired me, Brooke Rollins, called him and said, "Hey, we need to fight back against the federal government." And that work turned into our state's trust office in D.C., where every day we go around the Capitol Hill, led by wonderful Matt Egan, to just ask the question, should the federal government be doing this? Can't the states be doing this? Aren't the states the laboratories of democracy? What about the states? But we realize, and we've come to find, that the experience and expertise can't just happen on Capitol Hill, where we're fighting for Texas. We've come to find that experience and expertise and innovation in Texas needs to be everywhere. In Atlanta, Nashville, Tallahassee, Springfield, even Sacramento, California, and every other state in this country. And that's why this year we've radically expanded our States Trust project to embrace approaches in the other 49 states and ensure that maybe they can have some of the glory and grace that comes with being a Texan. And we promoted our wonderful Julie Warren, who I think is here today. Is our VP of State Affairs for States Trust. If you haven't met her, she is a force of nature. But Julie, are you here? We should recognize all the efforts you do, because you're working 49 states. I spend most of my time just working one. Julie's, all over the place. We won't make them into Texas. That wouldn't be fair to them. But we'll do something better. We'll help them be the best Tennessee, where we've been working with Governor Lee, the best Florida, we've been working with Governor DeSantis, or the best Virginia, we've been working with Governor Youngkin, and the best every other state they can be, because to save America, we need to make every other state a lot more like Texas. But we also have to understand that none of this will be accomplished overnight. The rule of law was not eroded overnight. Our institutions were not overtaken overnight. And our culture was not lost overnight. This is an urgent fight, but it's a fight that we must fight, and we also have to understand it's a generational one. The left chipped away at us slowly but surely over the past decades, and it's time that we respond to the degradation of our society and institutions with the urgency the situation demands. Because the fight is here and the fight is now. And when we win, which we will win, I have every faith that we will, we'll have to come back and we'll have to do it. And we will come back again and again and again to ensure, because we know the price of liberty is internal vigilance. And we cannot ever back down to the fight because the left is not backing down, and we can't back down either. You know, my good friend, Senator Phil Graham, who I wish was with us today, but he's with his grandchildren, he chose that over being here. But he told me that there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And that's why we painstakingly lay out the groundwork for ideas here at TPPF. Because when their time comes, it's time to execute on that with immediate urgency. And I think no idea embodies that more than the fight for school choice. Something that Dr. Jim, I believe Dr. Jim is still here, the person whose shoulders we all stand on today. But Dr. Jim planted a seed over 3 decades ago that Texas is about to bear the fruit of. We've been building on it, coming back again over and over and over again. And you heard the governor on Wednesday, you heard the lieutenant governor yesterday, you've heard from many of our state representatives and state senators, and you know that the time for school choice is now. And in 2025, we will finally pass school choice in Texas. So, who are some of the big fighters for school choice? We talked about Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor, but now we talk about our keynote, who is going to be joining us via screen here today. There are quite a few leaders that have traveled along with us in this vital battle for the soul of our country and for our children. And I'm excited to introduce one of them, a man who has rightly described school choice as a civil rights issue of our time, and a man who understands the clear need for change for the children of Texas. And as we come to the end of this gathering here at our Policy Summit, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Senator Ted Cruz, who joins us for our final session, albeit virtually. And Clint's telling me that they're trying to get him maybe to his seat. Oh, I can see a TV over here, so I'll wait for him to sit down. Luckily, I have a few more pages, Clint, so don't worry. I'll give my best Ted Cruz answer to my introduction to Ted Cruz, so bear with me for the next 40 minutes. But throughout his career, he has championed everything we stood for at TPPF. He has been a man that has been at the tip of the spear of every major fight in D.C. And when he was here in Texas, he was at the tip of the spear of all the major fights defending our great state. You know, prior to becoming a senator, he served as Solicitor General of Texas, arguing 9 cases before the United States Supreme Court, pushing back time and time again against federal overreach. And today, Senator Cruz is leading the fight in the Senate to support Texas jobs, hold big tech accountable to the American people, and secure our border from an invasion that is happening. He is a champion for limited government, national security, and economic growth. And in the Senate, he serves on the committees that matter. He's on the Foreign Relations Committee, which informs our national policy in matters of war and peace in international relations. And I'm sure he'll have quite a lot of thoughts on what is happening in Europe and in the Middle East and at our southern border. And he serves on our Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, where he is the ranking member, which informs policies critical to the economic security of our country. And he serves on the Senate Rules Committee, which guides the operation of the United States Senate, the body of our bicameral legislature, which ensures equal representation for each state. And fittingly, Senator Cruz serves on the Judiciary Committee, where he is the ranking member of the subcommittee on the Constitution. And if you ever haven't watched Senator Cruz really go after a judicial nominee, I really, really highly recommend you do it, because it's got to be one of the most terrifying experiences amongst anyone going up for that. You know, on Wednesday, I shared the story of Mexican General Manuel Mayer y Terán, who in 1828 tried to warn his superiors that Texans, honorable and dishonorable alike, travel with their political constitution in their pockets. These Texans demanded the privileges, authority, and officers which such a constitution guarantees. And Senator Cruz embodies the spirit of our original Texans who carry our constitution in their pockets, working tirelessly to ensure that the rights of the people and the states enshrined in the Constitution are not trampled, eroded, or erased by the power-hungry federal government. And so as we get Senator Cruz up on the screen here shortly, I would like to say one final point of privilege. You know, Senator Cruz is a one-man army, it seems like, in D.C. Every time I'm up there, he is waging a war for the soul of our country, and he has never backed down. He hasn't backed down from the liberal left or even those in his own party that might want him to sit down and shut up. I don't think the Senate Majority Leader is a big fan of Senator Cruz, but he doesn't care because he knows he has to do what is right for Texas. So, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome virtually Senator Ted Cruz, who will try to get up on the screen here in just a moment. Are we getting close, Clint? Should I just start singing or something? You know, we could talk a lot about, you know, A&M football and what's going to happen on November 30th. There we go. No, but I actually just saw Senator Cruz sit down, so we're going. I'm telling y'all, you know, you guys are in for a real treat, and I appreciate you being graceful with us as we work through the technology of all this. We've never had to do this, but last year we actually had one of our speakers say, "Hey, maybe I'll arrive via hologram," and so I'm glad we didn't have to do that with Senator Cruz, but I know he is ready to join us. I can see him, and so I would love to welcome, and please help me welcome our wonderful junior senator from the state of Texas, Ted Cruz. Senator Cruz, thank you for being with us here today. You know, I've never done something like this. I feel like a Fox News host. I'm interviewing you virtually. You're quite used to this, so I appreciate your kindness, though, in being with us over lunch, because you are obviously kept in D.C. So I think the first question I should start with, what's keeping you in the swamp? Why can't we get you back to the Lone Star State?
Well, Greg, I wish I were back in Texas. I'm always happier in Texas. I had planned to be there. This was going to be a fireside chat. Sadly, Chuck Schumer is keeping us all here. We're voting on this monstrosity of an omnibus bill. We're going to be voting probably all day. We're stuck here. But I will say, you know, it's an interesting image. Instead of sitting side by side, I guess I'm projected behind you in a gigantic screen. And I must say, you know, you look pretty damn small. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah, Senator, you're literally lording over me. It's quite terrifying. Senator, we're so appreciative of the work you're doing in D.C. and totally understand why you can't make it. But, you know, you lead on so many different subjects. I think the first one I would love to hear you talk about is obviously our border. You know, is one of the most acute things we feel here in Texas. You know, I travel around the whole state, and whether I'm in South Texas or I'm up in Amarillo or in the Panhandle, every Texan is talking about the issues at our border and their concern about how it is undermining the rule of law, and we're losing our country because of it. And, you know, yesterday we saw in El Paso a bunch of migrants overrun some border fence and overrun our National Guard down there. Luckily, there was a wall behind them that kind of like helped corral a lot of that. But I would love for you to talk a little bit about, you know, what you're seeing at the border and what you expect Texas and the federal government to do to kind of help bring this into chaos under control.
Well, look, I think all of us understand this, but every day the border keeps getting worse. And look, the border has always been a problem, but it is orders of magnitude worse than it has ever been. And I will tell you, if you don't spend a lot of time on the southern border, as bad as you think it might be, I promise you it is 1,000 times worse. I spend a lot of time down there. When I'm down there, I regularly will go out on midnight patrol with the Border Patrol agents. And the volume that is coming, number one, when you go out on midnight patrol, you don't have to go search for illegal immigrants. They'll find you. Within minutes, groups will find you and they will turn themselves into you. They'll go look for the Border Patrol and they'll turn themselves in. Why? Because they know once they turn themselves in under Joe Biden, they get to stay. And in fact, if you look at what Biden has done, this invasion, and it is an invasion. Watch the video from yesterday in El Paso. There's no other word to describe a mob of over 100 illegal immigrants overrunning the National Guard, violently entering the country, pushing the guardsmen aside. It is an invasion, and it is a deliberate invasion that Joe Biden wants, that Kamala Harris wants, that Chuck Schumer wants, and that every congressional Democrat wants. We have seen in the 3 years Joe Biden has been president, more than 10.4 million illegal immigrants come into this country. The mass of it, there is no comparable example in U.S. history. And the human suffering from it is staggering. You know, one of the last times I was down at the border, a reporter asked me, said, well, isn't the policy of the Democrats on immigration, isn't it much more humane and compassionate? And I just started laughing. And I said, you know who doesn't believe that anymore? The Democrats. Yep. And I just asked the reporter, I said, where is Joe Biden? Where's Kamala Harris? Where is even a single Democrat senator or a single Democrat congressman? And they're not here because if they came, the TV cameras would come with them. And you cannot see the human suffering and misery that is produced by these open borders and justify it anymore. You can't see the dead bodies. When you sit down with Texas farmers and ranchers, as I've done many times, and they show you photograph after photograph of dead bodies they find on their farms and ranches. Pregnant women, elderly people, toddlers, left to die in the harsh Texas heat. When you see little children who have been horribly brutalized by the cartels, and I've looked in the eyes of little boys and little girls who've gone through this, it haunts you, it stays with you when you know what these children just experienced. When you see women who have been violently raped by human traffickers. When you look at the drug overdose deaths, last year we had more than 100,000 drug overdoses across our country. It's the highest in our nation's history. 70% of that is Chinese fentanyl coming across the southern border. To put that in perspective, in the entire Vietnam War, America lost just over 60,000 people. We lost nearly twice as many Americans last year due to drug overdoses. And it's gotten so bad in South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley, nobody is defending it. There's no Democrat standing up saying, isn't this a great policy? Because when you see the people who are suffering, their only defense is to ignore it and to count on the corrupt corporate media not to cover what's happening, because if you actually see it, it is heartbreaking and it's evil. The people, they are hurting. These Democrats have made a cold, calculated political decision that people can suffer and die, and they're fine with it because they look at 10.4 million illegal immigrants and they view them as future Democrat voters, and they say, great, we get to stay in power, and if people need to suffer and die, so be it.
Yeah. Wonderful answer. And so, Senator Cruz, obviously related to that, Texas is trying to do everything it can to, take the fight to the federal government. And so we passed, thanks to our wonderful legislators and our lieutenant governor and governor, Senate Bill 4 here in Texas that would make it a state felony to enter the state illegally and allow us to deport them back to Mexico. Now, that's been hung up in the courts, and it's been kind of yo-yoed back and forth from Fifth Circuit and the Supreme Court of if we could enforce it or not enforce it. And so, as one of the brightest, legal minds that we have, especially on this issue, would love to get your take on, where that's at and where that's heading, and what more you think Texas could be doing to kind of take back the issue from the feds and force the feds to maybe do something.
Yeah, listen, I'm proud of the state of Texas. I think Texas is fighting to secure our own border because of the absolute, complete, manifest failure of Joe Biden and the federal government. And that's the right thing for Texas to do. And whether it is having National Guardsmen and DPS troopers down on the southern border, whether it is putting up razor wire and physical barriers, whether it is building wall, or whether it is passing SB 4. SB 4 was, I think, very important legislation that would give the state the authority to arrest people who are illegal immigrants and to deport them, to send them back home. All of those are important steps. Now, as you noted, SB 4 is caught up in litigation. It has seesawed like crazy. So you had a district judge that enjoined the enforcement of SB 4. It went up to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals lifted the injunction and allowed SB 4 to go into effect. It went up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court put the injunction back in place initially. And then the next day, the Supreme Court lifted the injunction. And then hours later, the Fifth Circuit put the injunction back in place. So if you were keeping track, it went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Right now, the law is blocked from going into effect by the federal courts. It's blocked pending the resolution of the litigation in the Fifth Circuit. Now, in order to prevail, in all likelihood, Texas is going to have to go to the U.S. Supreme Court because there's a very problematic case called Arizona versus the United States. It's from 2012, when Arizona tried to pass a similar law when Barack Obama was doing a poor job of securing the border. Although I will say comparatively, it was a world of difference. Yeah. Greg, I've joked that Joe Biden has done something I used to think was impossible. He made me miss Barack Obama. And I got to say, comparatively, it's not even close. But in Arizona versus United States, the Supreme Court struck down Arizona's law that was quite similar to Texas's SB 4. And so to prevail, in all likelihood, Texas will have to go back to the Supreme Court and convince the Supreme Court to overturn the decision of Arizona versus United States. Now, I think Arizona versus United States was wrongly decided. I think there's a real possibility of overturning it, and that's one of the reasons the state passed that law, was to have a vehicle to challenge that Supreme Court decision. I think it is also possible that the court could uphold SB 4 even without overturning Arizona versus United States. And the way they would do so is Texas has based its legislation on the extraordinary circumstances that are unfolding, and in particular has based it on the invasion clause of the Constitution. Constitution provides that states have a right to defend themselves in the event of actual invasion. And so Texas is arguing, I think correctly, that we are being invaded. What do you call 10.4 million people coming in mass across our borders if it is not an invasion? Now, there is no case law on this. There is no precedent on this. So defining what constitutes an invasion for the invasion clause of the Constitution is breaking new ground. And frankly, look, I mean, we have to look back to the Mexican-American War, the War of 1812, to find the last time we had a traditional invasion, a military invasion on U.S. soil. What is happening on our southern border is utterly unprecedented. So I would readily say that the kind of ordinary illegal immigration of the past 30 years would in all likelihood not satisfy the threshold of an actual invasion. It would be law-breaking, it would be problematic, but it would not reach, I don't think any court would conclude it reaches the threshold of an invasion. The argument here is going to be, this is qualitatively different. The mass of it is so enormous that it is overwhelming. And many of the people who are coming in, I was in Brownsville a number of months ago. At the time I was there, the bulk of the people coming in, they were not from Mexico. Down in Brownsville at the time, they were primarily Chinese military-age men, young men in their 20s and 30s, not with women, not with children. And what happens when they come in, so the Biden administration does not view its role as stopping this invasion. Instead, they are actively aiding and abetting it. They are facilitating it. And for that matter, Alejandro Mayorkas views his job as speed it up. He wants to make it faster. He wants to be even more efficient processing illegal immigrants so more can come more quickly. So, for example, one of the last times I was there, the Border Patrol agent showed me an app that they have on their phones that every Border Patrol agent has now, that when someone comes across the border, typically they're carrying a plastic baggie, a big plastic baggie. In the baggie, they'll usually have some form of identification, a passport or a birth certificate or a driver's license. They often have a cell phone as well, and they typically have a piece of paper with a name and number of somebody in the United States. And the app that the Biden administration has designed, they can scan a passport and process an illegal immigrant in 2 minutes. And it auto-populates the fields in their database with all the different spots of their passport. So they sit there and scan it and boop, boop, boop. They say, okay, where do you want to go? You want to go to New York? You want to go to Chicago? You want to go to Miami? You want to go to Dallas? Okay, great. Stand over there. And then it's all about processing about the Biden administration sending illegal immigrants to every city in America.
So Senator Cruz, so why would they do this? So why is the Biden administration so hell-bent on ensuring that our country is overrun like this?
So I think it's three factors. Number one, Donald Trump broke the Democrat Party. Fundamentally broke it. Look, when I first arrived in the Senate 12 years ago, there was such a thing as moderate Democrats. They existed. You could work with them. There aren't any left. The Democrats, they hate Trump so much, their brains have melted. And what has happened is they have gone crazy off the edge to the left. You know, you remember a little while ago, Elon Musk tweeted out a visual of a chart from right to left, and it showed the center, and he described himself as slightly to the left of center. And then what happened is the entire chart moved dramatically because the left went bat crap crazy. And suddenly Elon, who hadn't moved at all, found himself sitting there right of center because the left had gone to crazy town. What has happened in the Biden administration on every issue, the people driving the issues are the extremes and the radicals. So on economic policy, it's the Elizabeth Warrens and the Bernie Sanders that are driving it. On judicial nominees, they're nominating people who are just radicals, who make Joe Biden, who make Obama's nominees seem moderate. On law and order, it's the abolish the police crazies who are setting the agenda. On gender policy, it's the nutty people who want to surgically mutilate 8-year-old little boys and little girls. Look, that's a 90-10 issue. 90% of Americans say, no, we should not sterilize little children. But yet, that's Joe Biden's position, is pull out the knife, let's go. On every issue, it's the extreme. And so on immigration, the people setting the Biden administration's policy are the open border lunatics who literally believe a border is immoral. These are the people who want Texas and California given back to Mexico. They believe we have no sovereignty, we have no right. Anybody should be able to come here. That's who's setting their policy. That's one factor, is the Democrat Party in Washington has handed itself over to the extremes. The second factor I referenced a minute ago, which is the media has been corrupted. The corporate media, Trump didn't just break the Democrats, he broke the media. The corporate media does not report on what's happening on the border. If you watch CNN, there is no border crisis. ABC, NBC, CBS doesn't exist. And so Democrats know if they just keep quiet about it, most Americans won't know about it. That's the second factor. And then I think the third factor is just raw politics. They look at those 10.4 million illegal immigrants and they say, those are Democrat voters. Some of them will vote illegally right now. They're counting on some of them to vote in Texas this year. And others, they think once they're here, when the Democrats, when we have control, we'll give them amnesty, we'll give them voting rights, and that ensures Democrats stay in power forever. And so as a result, they literally do not care about the children being brutalized and the women being raped. It doesn't matter to them because political power matters more than protecting innocent victims.
I was so grateful for Senator Cruz's leadership on so many issues, obviously school choice being at the top of that list. But he is leading on energy and other issues, and of course we heard his remarks on the border. And this is kind of what happens when you are trying to do this all live, and it doesn't always work out right. But I think the point that he was making, and the point that we're trying to make here in Texas, is that we have to be optimistic about the future. You know, as we kind of close the second annual policy summit, the 22nd year we've done this with the record crowd, you know, I want to take a second to recognize the people that put this on. Clint Neesmith, Erica, Addie, Annie, and Kristen, who put this on. This is not easy. In fact, if you're wondering if they're going to start preparing for the next one, well, they've already started preparing for next year. You know, we had over 1,100 people register for this event this year, which blows the doors off of what we've done before. And I think it's a testament to what is happening in Texas, a testament to what's happening in this organization, and a testament to all the things that y'all hold dear. So I want to close by saying that I want to thank y'all for attending and devoting your time, your treasure, to everything that we're doing in this great state to keep Texas and America the freest place on earth. And I hope you leave today feeling encouraged, because the last question I was going to ask Senator Cruz before he froze was, well, why do you feel optimistic? Because we've talked, as I said earlier, we've talked about a lot of heavy things. But the reason that we should all feel optimistic is because we're in a room full of people like each and every one of you. And you all understand the obligation and the duty that we have to do what is right for our state and for our country. And it is because of each and every one of you, it's because of organizations like TPS and many of our other coalition partners and the great people that you heard from, that we will ensure that not only will we save Texas and maintain the soul of our state, but we're going to save our country. And I think 2024 is going to be the most consequential year that this great republic and experiment has had in many, many years, and probably all of our lifetimes. And I think that's going to lead to one of the most remarkable 2025s that we've ever seen. So thank each and every one of you for joining us. I look forward to celebrating a lot of this in 2025 when we're back here in February of 2025. God bless y'all, and God bless Texas.